This is a cup of coffee. This is a terrible way of getting caffeine. Coffee, pre-workouts, energy drinks, they're all gonna give you a huge boost in energy, but give you a massive crash. Not to mention you're gonna build up a tolerance and eventually get addicted to caffeine like every single other person on the planet. So what if there was a way of getting caffeine in where you get that boost in energy and that boost in alertness, but you don't get addicted, you don't build up a tolerance, and you don't get a huge crash at the end of the day? Well, there is a way, and let me show you how to do that using this weird green looking drink. Cheers. No one is consuming caffeine properly right now, and it's pretty frustrating, it's pretty sad to see. Everyone who uses caffeine seems to be addicted to it. They seem to be a slave to caffeine. Basically, everyone is following this 3-step cycle that gets them to a point where they're addicted and they're a slave to caffeine. Step 1 of this cycle is they just start drinking a cup of coffee and they go, ooh, this actually feels pretty good. I feel kind of nice right now. So what happens is then they go tomorrow and they go, whoa, well, I felt pretty good yesterday when I had coffee. I might have one today. And then the next day they'll have a coffee, and then the next day. So they're going to keep consuming more and more and more because it feels really good. Then what happens is they enter phase 2, where they start to build up a tolerance, because that 1 cup of coffee no longer feels really, really good. It just feels like baseline. It just feels like normal. This is how I normally operate right now, because your body has to, of course, adjust to the new caffeine it's taking in. So what happens now that you've built a tolerance is you have to increase your consumption. Rather than having 1 cup of coffee a day, you now have to have 2 cups of coffee a day. And after a while, that's going to feel really, really good. But then you're going to have to drink 3 cups of coffee a day. And then after a while, it has to be 4, and then 5, and then 6. And when does it stop? It doesn't really stop. It just keeps going because you keep building a tolerance. And what your body requires to feel good, to feel amazing, just keeps raising. That ceiling just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. Then you enter stage 3, which is where you become addicted. This is basically where you're drinking 3 cups of coffee a day. Now try taking 0. What happens after you spend 3 weeks drinking 3 cups of coffee a day and then you have a day off? Well, I can tell you what will happen. You will feel absolutely terrible. I know this because I've done it myself, and I've seen so many people when they stop caffeine, even for a day after they've been taking it for prolonged periods of time and build up a tolerance, is they just feel terrible. You almost feel depressed on your day off. So what do you want to do? Well, gosh, I feel so bad when I don't take caffeine. I'm going to have to take it again. How many people do you hear say, oh, I need my morning coffee, or oh, I can't do this until I've had my coffee? Congratulations, you're addicted to coffee and you've just become a slave to caffeine. The next issue, and this is far less of a problem than that 3-step catastrophe that people go through, but people are getting the wrong sources of caffeine. In my opinion, anything like coffee, specifically pre-workouts and energy drinks, they're probably not the best sources of caffeine because you're not pairing them with complementary compounds like L-theanine, which I'll talk about a bit later in this video, but they're probably not the optimal source of caffeine, particularly people who are taking pre-workouts or energy drinks. Just way too much caffeine and not the optimal source because it's not paired properly. It's not really a natural source, not the best way to do it. The next thing that happens is people just drink it first thing in the morning. They just wake up, feel like an absolute zombie because there's no caffeine in their system, and then they just smash a coffee straight away first thing in the morning. And what this does is it messes with your natural cortisol response for waking up, and it's going to lead to a way, way, way bigger crash in the afternoon, and you're going to feel even worse. And what happens when you have that crash? Well, you have 2 options. You can either feel terrible for the rest of the day, or you can smash another coffee. And that's the next problem that people have, is they drink caffeine in the afternoons. They drink caffeine too close to bed, and because caffeine has a half-life of something around 12 hours, if you drink caffeine too close to bed, there's still a certain amount of caffeine in your system. And if that caffeine is blocking your ability to go to sleep, it is either going to make it harder and impossible for you to sleep, or even if you do sleep, the quality of your sleep is going to be significantly worse. And what happens when you have worse quality and quantity of sleep? Well, you're going to wake up, you're going to feel tired and lethargic. What's a great cure for that? Let me just smash a cup of coffee. And you can see how you just become completely addicted to caffeine because you're creating suboptimal sleep environments, you're creating a tolerance and addiction to the substance, and you barely even know what it feels like to be off caffeine. And this is how everyone seems to be using caffeine right now, and it's pretty sad to see. So let's address the biggest issue, because this is going to be the first thing that you need to solve, and that is how to reduce your ability to build up tolerance and become addicted to caffeine. So the way I would do that is I would cycle caffeine. I would have some sort of caffeine cycling protocol going on where I'm drinking caffeine one day and the next day I'm off. So do between 3 or 4 days a week of caffeine, which means you're going to have 3 or 4 days off caffeine a week. What's going to happen is your body is not going to be in a rhythm of every single day I receive caffeine and build up that tolerance. You're going to have quite a low tolerance. And what that means is that the small amount of caffeine that you do get on your days on is going to feel really good. You're going to energize yourself and feel good, feel really productive, have that boost in energy, boost in alertness, everything you love about caffeine. Now you might be thinking, well, cool, but then what happens on my day off? Am I just going to feel terrible? Am I going to feel like a zombie? Well, no, you're probably not going to feel like a zombie because you haven't built up that tolerance or addiction to where you need it. But B, you could just cycle in some other form of stimulant that's non-caffeine related. For example, you could use nicotine. Now, I made a whole separate video about how to use nicotine properly, but you could cycle in nicotine on your off days. So, for example, chewing a 2 milligram piece of nicotine gum, maybe 2 or 3 of those on your days off, which means you're going to get effectively the same stimulant effect that caffeine is going to give you. You're going to have hunger suppression, you're going to have increased mood, increased memory, more dopamine, you're going to feel like doing work more, but you're not building up a tolerance to caffeine and you're not building up a tolerance to nicotine, which means you're not building up an addiction to caffeine or nicotine. So cycling is a great idea, but you can also pair it with another stimulant so that on your days off, you're adding in a different stimulant. So you're always feeling somewhat artificially stimulated, but it's from different sources. So you're not building up a tolerance, you're not building up an addiction. It's quite a good way of going about it. It's worth saying that if you have been abusing caffeine, like if you have some sort of huge tolerance or just basically drink caffeine every single day, it's probably going to be a good idea to take a certain amount of time off. So if you take 2 weeks off caffeine, you're going to have your tolerance basically entirely reset, at least for the most part, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you to incorporate these cycling periods. But it is important to say that if you're already addicted to caffeine, if you're already using it too much, it's probably a good idea to reset your tolerance before you start some sort of cycling block. Real quick, if you are an entrepreneur and you would like help reaching peak mental and physical performance so you can grow yourself and your business, then I recommend working with us. I'll leave a link in the description below. So let's talk about the next big problem, and that is preventing crashes. What is the best way we can go about using caffeine so we don't get that crash that's usually associated with drinking caffeine? So it is time for me to tell you about that weird green drink that I showed you at the start of this episode. And that weird green drink is matcha tea. The reason that matcha tea is going to be one of the best options for preventing crashes is matcha tea is high in a compound called L-theanine, which is going to pair nicely with caffeine to give you a more smooth high from the caffeine. You're not going to feel as jittery. You're not going to get a big spike and then a big crash. It's more consistent and thorough the high you get from caffeine. And especially if you don't have a huge tolerance and a huge build up to caffeine, this stuff feels really, really good. You can notice a big difference. You don't get that anxious, jittery energy that you get if drinking something like coffee or an energy drink or a pre-workout. With the L-theanine, you get a much more stable boost of energy, and it's a really, really good idea to use matcha over something like coffee, over pre-workouts, over energy drinks, much better. The specific matcha tea you want to get is called ceremonial grade matcha tea. The reason is that it's going to have higher caffeine levels, it's going to have higher L-theanine levels, and it's going to taste better. It's not going to be as bitter. It's significantly better. So I'd use that. And a ceremonial grade matcha tea, for a teaspoon of that, it's basically the same caffeine levels as a cup of coffee, or actually a shot of coffee. But it's going to have L-theanine levels between 30 and 60 milligrams compared to coffee, which is 0, or most energy drinks 0, most pre-workouts 0. With the amount of matcha, I would recommend doing maybe 1 teaspoon or 2 teaspoons at most. You really don't need a lot of this stuff. You're going to feel a nice, consistent, smooth energy. Don't overdo it. As we've already talked about, if you overdo it, that contrast is going to be off. You're going to start to build up that tolerance, that want for it, just a little bit, just enough to get you going, get you that little boost of energy. Just don't overdo it. 1 to 2 teaspoons will do you. So this is matcha powder. This is what you want to get. Specifically, you want to find something that is ceremonial grade. The reason for that is that ceremonial grade is going to have more caffeine, it's going to have more L-theanine, and it's also just going to taste better. What we want is about 1 teaspoon. As you can see here, it is a strange green powder looking thing, but it is quite remarkable what it does. So I would add water, about 80 degrees Celsius, to this. Give it a little mixy, and that'll do it. The next one, which is going to help you reduce that crash, is avoiding drinking caffeine between 90 and 120 minutes of waking. Your body naturally spikes in cortisol first thing in the morning. So what happens if you smash coffee is that you're suppressing that natural cortisol response, and your energy regulation is going to be a little off during the day, and you're eventually going to crash way harder than you would have otherwise if you just waited that 90 to 120 minutes after waking. The next thing you can do to reduce your crash that you might get from caffeine is to spread out your caffeine intake throughout the day. Rather than just doing one massive hit of caffeine at the start of the day and then that's it, spread it out. Wait your 120 minutes or 2 hours after waking, and then have your first teaspoon of matcha tea, and then let's say 3 or 4 hours later you can have your second, and then that'll do you for the day. Rather than doing it all at once, you can get a bigger peak, and then of course it's going to have to come down at some point. At least if you're using matcha, it's not going to be as intense. But if you at least spread it out over the 2 sittings, you're just getting a more even and consistent hit of caffeine, and it's obviously a much better way of doing it. Now we need to talk about sleep, because it is very important to note that if you're using caffeine incorrectly, it is going to interfere with your ability to get to sleep and the quality of your sleep. And realistically, most of us use caffeine anyway to get more energy, more alertness, have more cognitive function. But what is going to improve any of those 3 factors more than anything is just getting a good quality sleep. So make sure that you're not disrupting the quantity or quality of your sleep by drinking caffeine too close to bedtime. So give yourself at least 8 to 10 hours before bed where you do not touch caffeine whatsoever. So if you're splitting up the caffeine into 2 different sittings, then make sure that last sitting is 8 to 10 hours before bed. A lot of people I hear, and this is really frustrating, they'll say, caffeine doesn't affect me. I can get to sleep fine, even if I drink a coffee right before bed. Fantastic. You have such a crippling addiction to caffeine that you're able to fall asleep even when you've ingested a huge amount of caffeine. That does not mean it's not affecting the quality of your sleep. Just because you can fall asleep doesn't mean it's not going to influence the quality of your sleep. If you are drinking caffeine within 8 hours of bedtime, there is going to be caffeine in your system, and it is going to reduce the quality of your sleep. So please, even if you can fall asleep, just avoid it at least 8 hours before bed. This is the trap that happens to a lot of people, is they'll just smash caffeine too close to bedtime. They'll get a poor quality sleep, and guess what? Wow, I'm waking up feeling really groggy and tired. What can I do to prevent grogginess and tiredness? Oh, I know. I'll just drink more caffeine, right? And then this just happens every day, is that you get that crash because you've drank too early in the morning and you've drank to compensate for poor sleep. And then you get another bad night's sleep, and then you just use more caffeine to compensate. And you just keep filling that hole of actually improving your sleep and the quality of your real natural energy with more and more caffeine. It's the classic trap that everyone does. So make sure you're getting proper good quality of sleep by avoiding consuming too close to bed. So what is the optimal caffeine protocol? What caffeine protocol can I use to get the benefits of increased alertness, increased energy levels, but not build up my addiction, not build up my tolerance, and not get these crashes? This is exactly what I currently do, and it seems to be working really well. First thing you should do is you should be cycling your caffeine. So 3 days on, 4 days off. Let's say Monday caffeine, Tuesday no caffeine, Wednesday caffeine, Thursday no caffeine, Friday caffeine, Saturday no caffeine, Sunday no caffeine. 3 days on, 4 days off. This will keep your tolerance levels down. You're not going to get addicted. It's going to be a good baseline. On those off days where you're not consuming caffeine, maybe add in something like nicotine gum. Get another form of stimulant so that you're still feeling alert. You can still get work done and get yourself through the day without having to use caffeine. Because again, We don't want to build up a tolerance. We don't want to get addicted. So cycle with something else. Next one is your caffeine source. I recommend the ceremonial grade matcha tea. The reason is that's high in L-theanine. It's going to give you more steady energy levels rather than that big crash from most caffeine and the big drop. And you're not going to get the anxiety and jitteriness. So definitely the best and most pure source of caffeine, in my opinion. How you should actually use it, I would say have your first teaspoon 2 hours after waking up. Okay. And then 3 to 4 hours later, if you feel like I want more caffeine, then do your second teaspoon. And that'll do you for the day. Remember, that's 3 days on, 3 days off. So on your days on, 2 hours after waking, 1 teaspoon of matcha. 3 to 4 hours later, you can add a second if you want. Remember, ceremonial grade because it's going to have more caffeine, more L-theanine, and taste better. The last thing and the most important thing for the caffeine protocol is if you have a tolerance to caffeine, if you've been abusing caffeine for quite a while, 2-week break. Take 2 weeks completely off caffeine. Yes, it's going to suck. Yes, it's not going to be fun whatsoever, but your body needs to reset its tolerance. If you want to get the benefits from caffeine, but you effectively feel nothing unless you drink a truckload of coffee, then there's no point in using caffeine at all. It's just used as a crutch, not to actually benefit you at all. So take that 2-week break. But that is how I would recommend you use caffeine properly. Cycling caffeine on and off. Use another stimulant in the meantime if you need it. But do not abuse caffeine. Do not get addicted to caffeine. So many people are using it the wrong way. I thought I need to make a video to show you how to use caffeine properly so you can get all the effects without all the negative consequences associated with caffeine. That was the end of the video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. There's probably a video somewhere around here that you might be interested in, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers. Oh, it's so hot.